me here today, especially on such a beautiful day. I left and it was chilly and cold where I was, so it was nice to come here. How many of you, by show of hands, and we're not writing your names down, are perfectly satisfied with the level of retail and you can get all of your needs met here in town, in the City of Angels camp? Okay. So not one person feels like there's everything that they need here in Angels camp. What are some things that potentially you would like to see more of? It doesn't have to be a specific concept. It could be a type of a thing.
Shoes.
Shoes, okay. Shoes are always a popular item. Clothing, okay. Men's or women's clothing. What are some restaurant options? Restaurants, okay. So some sit-down restaurant options. So clearly retail is a vital part of your economic development strategy, whether that's new retail, existing businesses, infill, redevelopment, all of that represents opportunities as it relates to that retail piece. Can existing businesses and new retail coexist? What do you guys think? Can they coexist? New incoming retail, okay, and existing businesses. Why do you think that is? What are some reasons that might be? Synergy. Okay, perfect. So you've got the opportunity of new retail driving foot traffic to some existing businesses, giving more people a reason to stop, giving more people, more residents primarily, a reason to stay in town. What are some other reasons that there might be a symbiotic relationship between existing business and new retail opportunities?
Competition.
Competition. Good retailers have to survive. Good competition is going to come. I don't know who said competition. You did. Okay. That's excellent, because what it does is it starts to force your existing businesses to be very customer service oriented and differentiate, and you mentioned this earlier, on the basis of products and service, which is a huge plus in the retail world. I want to go somewhere and shop somewhere where I'm going to be recognized, where they know me, where they know my likes, my dislikes, and they're able to offer that to me and be able to help me through the process. Someone else had raised their hand on some differentiation. What attracts that existing business, how they can coexist, existing business and regional and national retail. There's one other person that raised their hand that I might have missed. Okay, so we've gotten two good points, synergy and competition. Driving that foot traffic and then also really creating an opportunity for some existing businesses to grow and compete. I've got a client, Hercules, California. One of the biggest worries that they had, and you guys already have a Starbucks, is they had a local gentleman that owned a coffee shop forever. Well, Starbucks invariably came to that particular community. Well, the community was very upset, and what happened is that coffee shop, the local business, ended up doing so much better because they offered coupons. They went out of their way to really serve their customer base, and they had such a cult-like following that they continued to coexist in a very good relationship and garner more opportunity. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about understanding and knowing your customers to help your existing businesses, but also to identify what is the market bear out as it relates to retail in today's environment. So a little bit about Buxton, just to set the stage. We are the industry leader in customer analytics and site selection. What in the world does that mean? Well, we answer, who is my customer, and how does that translate into dollars and cents? So we're able to utilize that in the healthcare industry. We do this in the public sector environment, and also the retail sector, also in consumer packaged goods. Identifying who the customer is and how that differentiates each and every type of business. We've been named to a variety of different types of regional and national retail awards around the United States. And we have more than 500 years of retail experience. And all that really means is we're looking at things through a retail lens to see how that applies to your community and how that helps you differentiate yourself as it relates to that retail piece. A lot of different types of clients in the retail world. We have, for example, Z Gallery, McCormick & Schmick's, Ruby Tuesdays, Adidas, Bass Pro Shops, FedEx Kinko's, a variety of different types of retailers that want to do one thing. They want to grow to survive, and they want to make a home run location. Because what hurts a retailer, a dark space, having a location that is a very poor location that they're having to manage all their time and all their energy to get prop that location up. Same thing with the public sector. What hurts your existing businesses and other businesses around? A dark space. Having that around you, it really does, it's not healthy for the overall business. So we provide strategic answers as to where those businesses should locate in the heart of their customers. Same thing with our community clients. We work with communities large and small. I have the privilege of working with communities that are large, like Oakland and San Jose, and some very small communities, like Andalusia, Alabama, Farmersville, California, Fowler, California. So large and small, different types of communities, all trying to be very proactive and understand who are their customers and what is the market they're at as it relates to that retail piece. So what you're looking at here is a variety, a sampling of kind of our NASCAR logo board, if you will, of some of our retail clients around the United States. California Pizza Kitchen, I'm going to talk a little bit about them. If you think about that particular concept, how many of you are familiar? Okay, lots of people, good. When we first started working with them about 4 years ago, they really had a very they're one way of looking at things. They said, we're going to go here with this much traffic and this much income, this much population density. That's our formula. Well, what happened is they had a lot of stores that weren't doing very well. So they asked us to help them refigure out their formula. And that formula was defined by the consumers. So we've been working with California Pizza Kitchen over the course of time to help them identify the best location strategy on the basis of those consumers. They've liked what we've done so much, and their performance has changed so significantly that we also help them with their newer, smaller inline store called ASAP. FedEx Kinko's, those drop boxes, which were blue, now I think they were Star Wars for a while. They're all kinds of, the package drop-off locations, just the boxes. We tell FedEx Kinko's every location where they should go, how many boxes they will do out of that particular location around the United States. So once you harness the power of data and really understand the consumer picture, you're really able to marry that with some very wise and strategic decisions. So what we do with a lot of communities around the United States, and I'm here to talk to you about what we're doing in some of our smaller communities. We factually identify comparable trade areas that are just like yours around the region, around the United States, that are the same on basis of population growth, customer density, how urban, how rural, all of those factors are coming into play. So you know very strategically what do you look like in terms of comparable communities. And then factually identify what retailers are present there that aren't in your community. Do you have to go out and go after all these retailers? Absolutely not. But what you can do now is say, we know now what is our market bear out, and number two, maybe there's some concepts we would like to spend our time and energy landing to benefit the whole, and potentially maybe there's a local existing business owner that might like to cultivate a concept like this type of retailer. So there's a lot of benefit in knowing the facts of your consumers and how that plays out as it relates to retail. Recently there was a study done by the Center of Regional and Urban Analysis, and what the study basically said is that consumer quality of life as it relates to natural amenities was equal to that of having the opportunities of shopping and restaurants. So they were equal. Having natural, you have a beautiful waterway here, you're surrounded by nature, and it's gorgeous. But consumer quality of life, the overall quality of life, were equal in the consumer's mind to natural amenities, being able to have both. Traditionally, economic development as a whole, if you're familiar with economic development, has been we're going to recruit manufacturing, we're going to recruit call centers, we're going to recruit tourism. But really, what has shifted in economic development is retail has become a very big part of that, not only from the aforementioned quality of life factor, but also sales tax revenue. So the sales tax revenue directly impacts your community. It impacts your police, it impacts your fire, it impacts a lot of amenities that the community has to offer. And what we know, based on a variety of different things, that manufacturing jobs as a whole are on the decline. A lot of it's going overseas, unfortunately, but manufacturing jobs are harder and harder to come by, whereas retailing opportunities are more and more looking for more locations, seeking more opportunities, offering more job opportunities around the United States. So really today, it's important to understand the retailer. You have to know that, number one, retailers have to grow to survive. They're looking for new locations, and they're looking for customers to warrant their store. Also, retail development has changed dramatically. Particularly, you guys are in a state where you've benefited from a lot of that change. You've got a lot of stores. One of my clients is in the East Bay, Richmond, California. And I know this is probably a dirty word here, but Walmart is a 3-story location there. So they've gone in, taken an existing space, and gone vertical. Now it's a very high-density type of environment. You've got a lot of different things that are happening as it relates to that market. You've got a very new retailer. It's not new to the UK. Tesco operates in the U.S. at a Fresh and Easy. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. It's hit California huge. So there's a lot of things that are happening in California as it relates to retail. Mixed-use neighborhood shopping, but primarily lifestyle-based, convenience-based retail. So being able to pull up, drive in, get the things you want, and go home. So having that convenience-based shopping is really what's driving what's happening. And typically, retailers are planning their stores 2 to 3 years in advance. So our clients are looking 2 to 3 years out in terms of their location strategy. So it's very critical to start differentiating yourself on the basis of your buying habits, your consumer picture, to understand what does that look like and how does that play out here in the particular trade area. So why should you recruit retail? We've talked about quality of life, satisfying some of your citizens' desires to shop at home, to stay at home, to eat at home. Some of those things, creating some of that retail synergy and that retail begetting retail. Also being able to retain some of the dollars that are being spent elsewhere. So being able to kind of cultivate and grow the opportunities that are present here. So retail leakage is essentially has a long-term negative impact. And leakage, I'm defining leakage as all of you guys that says there's opportunities and you have to go elsewhere to get some of your needs met. That's leakage. It's going into another community, into another area that's benefiting from your either sales tax revenue or maybe you go to eat there, maybe you see a movie, maybe then you do your shopping and then you come home. So even it's kind of hurting at some of the existing businesses here when you've got to go elsewhere to get some of those needs met. So what you're looking at essentially is a comparison of Community A versus Community B. Community B is collecting below their fair share. They have a lower sales tax revenue on the basis of the fact that you have to go elsewhere. You've got to go somewhere else to get your shopping opportunities, and potentially that surplus revenue is driving infrastructure, street improvements, police, fire improvements, those types of things in that community. So what should communities do? Well, number one, I think you have to understand very clearly who you are. What does the market bear out? And within that, once you know who you are, instead of, what types of retailers are looking for your types of customers? Because then, if you know very clearly and strategically who you are, then you can start making some decisions about the direction you want to head. So the very first thing is, let's establish a roadmap. Let's figure out who in the world are we on the basis of our buying habits and our lifestyle habits. And then ultimately, being able to understand the retailer's needs and being able to speak to the retailer in a language they understand. What language do retailers understand? They understand, am I going to make money here? Do I have the customers to warrant the store? So someone that's going to dine in my restaurant or buy my product. That's what we have to be able to communicate. And there's a lot of ways of being able to communicate that, and that's what I'm going to talk to you here in a moment about. But also there's a lot of other things you can do to make it a retail and friendly environment. Infrastructure, permitting, all of those pieces of streamlining the process of being a retail-friendly environment. And this applies to your existing businesses as well. So how do we identify the trade areas? Very first thing, drive time. No one is thinking in terms of miles. You're not thinking it's 18 miles this way. It's time. Retailers are thinking in terms of time. And this is really the best methodology as it relates to your trade area. We don't want to capture every single person that's ever driven through here, because I recognize you have a lot of people that drive through here. The very first picture we have to be able to paint for businesses is, what do you have the retailers can count on within a primary trade area of 15, 20 minutes? Day in and day out, what do you have that's sustainable? Everything on top of that becomes an additional layer. For example, Dickinson, North Dakota is one of my clients. People drive 60 minutes to come work in Dickinson, North Dakota, and they do have a pretty strong daytime workday population. But we have to be able to say, at a very reasonable snapshot, at a very close-in, tight trade area, do they have a customer base to warrant particular types of concepts? And if so, what are they? So we need to be able to look at both layers. So looking at drive time, we're looking at speed, road conditions, street network, all of that is taken into account to give you the best picture of what is that drive time for the particular trade area. And we want to calculate the best route as it relates to that retail area. So really, if we said, let's anchor off of here, where we're at the fire station, we'd be looking holistically at the trade area for the community and the appropriate retail nodes that are in the area. So there's a couple different historical ways of looking at trade area. One is your city limits. One, that's really not a good picture for you guys. There's some things happening here that if you just stuck with straight demographics of here's our city's political boundaries and this is our population, doesn't really capture what's really going on here as it relates to trade areas. That's really not the best way to differentiate yourself. The other piece of that is retailers have widely available demographics, readily and widely available. So there has to be some ways to differentiate yourself. Two, you could say, here's the fire station, let's draw an 8-mile ring, and here's our retail potential within this 8-mile ring. Well, you've got geography barriers, you've got some mountainous regions. So we really need to be able to follow the street network, which is why we use this drive time. And what you're looking at here is an example of a primary trade area drive time, this red line here. And essentially, if you look just at the retail potential with the city limits, the 8-mile ring, and the drive time, now this is just an example, but you're picking up a more realistic snapshot of your retail trade area as it happens, as it relates to that particular drive time. So this is a more accurate depiction. So the very number one thing in understanding and talking to the retailers is saying, okay, let's talk trade area. Let's talk about what we have as it relates to our trade area. So you want to define your trade area. We define the trade area, and then we want to define the consumers. So if we take, I'm going to pick on you two, these two gentlemen here. Let's hypothetically say they're neighbors. Let's say their age is relatively close, their income is relatively close, ethnicity close, all of those pieces, age, race, sex, and income, demographics, same guy. Demographically, if I'm a retailer and I'm looking at demographics, I'd say, well, I want their average income of $40,000. That's what I want to go. Well, I'm going to go right in between these guys. Well, the problem with that is that customer-based information, which is what we use, psychographics is what customer-based information is. Psychographics says everything they own, eat, read, watch, and drink, drive and drink is going to be totally different. So you may own a bass boat, and you may prefer to go golfing. So those types of things are very customer-centric, customer-driven information. Well, that was, yes, a good lucky one. So, woo! No, but really, that's called customer-based information. So within the trade area, define your trade area. We want to know and understand who are your customers. So what I was talking about, bass boat golfing. Every single one of you in this room have a way of spending your money and living your life. So you may own a grocery reward card. Maybe you booked summer travel plans. Maybe you are a red wine drinker. Maybe you have a tendency to online bank. All of those things create a data trail about you, about how you spend your life, about how you spend your money. And so we're buyers of that information. We're one of the largest purchasers of consumer spending habits in the United States. We have more information than the Library of Congress on lifestyles and spending habits. So we're able to take that information, again, not to scare people, but to help our clients, our proactive communities, our proactive retailers make some very strategic and wise decisions on the basis of customers. So now when you marry your trade area, here's our trade area, and here is what our consumer picture looks like. This is our DNA, our fingerprint of what makes us unique, our buying habits and our lifestyle habits. And furthermore, that type of consumer is more likely to eat at a California Pizza Kitchen or shop at a Old Navy. I'm using these as examples. So those types of things start defining the consumer. Now you can start arming your existing businesses with the ability to understand who your consumers are, and not only that, be able to identify what that retail market is. And that's really what we're in the business of doing. So we look at a couple things. One, we look at your trade area. We're going to define what is that trade area. How does that stack up as it compares to communities around the region, around the United States. To say comparatively, what types of communities are you like around the United States. So then you've got some things to work with as it relates to customer density, types of distance to the nearest interstate. All of those pieces is part of the factor, and layered with your consumer picture. And then we're going to be able to identify what retailers are looking for those consumers, what retailers are looking in trade areas like yours. And again, this is just an example. We'll be able to tell you preferred square footage. Are they a franchisee? So now, maybe you'd like to open a shoe store to service all the people that would like shoes. Maybe instead of, and Payless isn't on there, but let's hypothetically say it's Payless. Well, let's say we're not real excited about Payless, but we'd like to create some type of concept, get the merchandising out there from an existing business perspective, and create that type of a concept locally. You could do that. Or maybe you say Payless is exactly what we want. We want a Payless store. It fits in exactly what we're trying to do, so let's recruit the Payless. So this really gives you some opportunities to be very proactive in the scheme of things with some facts and science. So this isn't just a gut feel approach. What it does is give you a third-party, fact-based, science-based approach to validate what do you guys look like? Who are your customers? How do you differentiate yourselves? And then we're able to tell you, let's say you want to go through and it gives you an opportunity to very proactively select what retailers do you want to be talking to. Where do those retailers locate in trade areas just like yours? So now, in this example is Sonic. But hypothetically, let's say it's Sonic, and that's a home run location. That's something everyone's excited about. Well, now you could go to Sonic and say, okay, you've located in trade areas just like ours. These are the locations that you have just like ours to warrant the store. So now you've got some fuel to the fire to aid in that recruitment strategy, along with their retail executive's phone number to contact, and we also send a letter on your behalf letting them know we found you to be a match. Provide you different types of thematic maps showing you how do you look from population, from growth, all of those pieces that you can use to create other opportunities, to cultivate other future retail opportunities that you'd like to focus on. Looking at income, property values as part of it, and then also supply and demand. Your leakage. We'll be able to tell you what is your leakage. It's an annualized figure. We'll be able to tell you by product category and store type. What do you have as it relates to your opportunities from a product demand and supply type of piece? So that's another piece that can not only be used with existing businesses, but can be used to cultivate other opportunities and future retail opportunities. So I think that the primary thing is number one, you've got to differentiate your community. Retailers are looking for a lot of places to go, but they're not going to go everywhere. And so you have to be retail friendly, but you also have to be able to differentiate yourself. And to be able to do that on the basis of facts, to know what do you bear out and who should you be talking to and what should you be working on locally to enhance what you're doing. You want to sell your trade area, not just City of Angels Camp. While it's spectacular and wonderful, all of those things, what is the trade area? What do we have in the trade area? The other thing that I didn't mention, and we're going to take into account, what retailers have already chosen to be here, but really too close in proximity to warrant another opportunity today, in today's environment. So we'll be able to look at really all expanding opportunities, also what's already chosen to be here. And this really does allow you to be very proactive in your community's economic future. So retail as an overall piece, is it the be-all and end-all? Is it the silver bullet? No. But it's an absolutely vital part of your community's health and development in a go-forward basis. The mayor of Andalusia, Alabama, a longtime client of ours, and he said, if you want to catch a fish, a retail fish, you got to bait the hook. And he has felt that we have partnered with him since 2005 to help them bait the retail hook. I wanted to keep it short for all of you guys that have to be everywhere, so any questions, I'm available. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I think we just have questions, yeah.
Yes. I have a question maybe for Lee and Tim there. I'm not a resident of Angels. I live in Murphy, but I'm actively involved with some groups who are part of the general plan redevelopment of the county. What the City of Angels chooses to do has dramatic impact. You know, it's the only incorporated city in our county and whatnot. So, for lack of a better way of asking it, how much input are we non-citizens allowed to give And is our input valuable, or are we not supposed to be at these meetings since you're talking about the city limits?
You're more than welcome.
Trade area.
What color's your money?
Really, moving forward, the city is going to move forward because that's our responsibility to our citizens. But we are very much part of this county, and we understand that. And as you know, we've had 2 joint meetings with the Board of Supervisors and the city council. And out of the last one of those meetings, we formally agreed to work together and move forward with what we're roughly calling an economic development summit approach. So this is why we advertise this widely, not just in the city. We think that some people use that old metaphor, a rising tide raises all boats. What we want to do is make sure no one's anchored too low, too tightly, and they get drowned. So that's why existing businesses need to be part of this process, as well as people looking to create new opportunities. So the door is wide open, and the agenda has not been fixed. We just know that we need to work in these economic downturns. We need to be more proactive, and it's the best way for us to control our future.
So it's not likely that the city says we want, for lack of a better term, big box, 120,000 square foot, and the county would say, no, we're not going to allow anything larger than 20,000 square feet. Is that unlikely based on some of your initial impressions? Do you have a sense that the working goals will be somewhat similar at the county level as with the city, or not?
Well, I'm looking at Diane right in front of you because we've had our first organizing meeting, and it represented not just Highway 4, it represented people for all of you. Diane, you might speak to that meeting.
Right. We put together an economic development group, but for lack of not yet a committee, and then type of terminology. But I think we are. I think that's our goal, is to put together a strategy that fits for the whole county, that encompasses everybody's needs. And we've only got one, so next meeting is next week. But I think we're all working together very nicely. So yes, your comments are very welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to please?
Sure. Go
Okay,
ahead.
good. Steve?
Could you give us an example of, you mentioned that you had dealt with cities this size. Could you give us an example of a home run that you hit with a city this size, or the circle that you made, with a 15-minute, population?
We've been a part of landing 15 million square feet of retail around the United States. So a
Well,
lot
I know
of
you're
retail.
successful. I think it'd be really helpful if we
Sure.
could walk away from here with an example of
Sure.
how you help somebody our size with, and in particular retailer that you marry them with. And as a second part of my question, in all your analysis of the constituency of the town, could you extract from, say we have 2 drugstores here, Long's and Rite Aid.
Right.
Could you go to them and when you talk about these people being 3 years out, how helpful would that be to see if those people are cracking the nut as far as the decision to move here, and are they sustaining themselves, are they just holding on, as a comparison also?
Okay. Related to success, yes, we have had a lot of success. I recently got a note from Dan Minert, who is the Deputy City Manager in Dinuba, which is in Tulare County. Their trade area is probably somewhat trade area-wise. I'm not talking city boundary to city boundary, because really it's more applicable to look at a trade area. Is very comparable. They've landed 19 retailers since we've been working with them since 2005, one a hotel. So for them, the investment more than paid for itself. Selma, the city manager, you may know DB over in Selma, they've been tremendously successful in landing retail. They've landed some things that they needed. They needed a Big Five sporting goods. They needed an Applebee's. They needed some things to kind of fill in the gap. And they're, of course, right off the 99. But they had some things that they needed to. They're also in a very heavily retail, highly competitive environment where retail's kind of going all around them. So they hired us to help them identify strategically what retailers are a good fit. Andalusia, Alabama, which I mentioned earlier, towards the end of my conversation, they're a population of about trade area is larger, but population about 4,000. So they've also been successful. They get very heavily involved in the International Council of Shopping Centers and proactively targeting and talking to those retailers.
Would you think that some, the two cities, Danuba and
Probably
Selma,
more Dinuba than Selma.
I don't think there's a comparison as far as population.
Trade area, there will probably would be.
Even with using a 99 corridor as
Dinuba, I think, is more of a comparison for you.
Okay.
Amy, in reading the case study on your website, you talked about Atalanta, Alabama, a town of 4,000. One of the success for them was the Super Walmart that and there's mixed emotions about
Sure.
big box format. Can you cite any examples of small towns such as ours? And I knew that I agree with Steve, it's a little bit larger, their trade area is a little bit larger than ours. Can you cite any examples of small towns that don't use a big box format but have been successful in bringing in some economic development with smaller retailers?
Sure.
I'll give you an example. There's a town, I don't know if it came up this way, they have said that they don't want any chain, and that's what's going to probably 30,000 over the next 20 years. So it's going to be much larger than we are. So we're kind of the piece that's right in the middle, and people are saying, well, maybe the big box will go kind of there. So is there an example of being successful without a large format?
Well, I think it depends on how you define big box, number one. Number two, if with Walmart's big box, then you say everything Walmart size and above, well, first you got to know what do you have? What does the market truly bear out? You've got to deal with facts before you say, well, we don't want any of it. Let's deal with what do we know can make it that actually locates in trade areas that look like ours. Number two, you've got to say we look at over 5,000 different types of retailers, regional and national, 3 or more locations. 80% of those retailers are not a big box format. They're smaller types of players that are looking for opportunities to grow. So you really have to be able to say, what can we bear out as it relates to our consumer picture? Saratoga, California is a client of mine. They aren't doing any retail recruitment. They're a small community, small downtown. They have really only infill opportunities for existing businesses. So we've done some project work with understanding who and differentiating their consumers and what that looks like so they can cultivate some existing business opportunities.
Fuel costs must be playing a factor in some fashion, although I didn't hear anything mentioned. I believe you use drive time as the measure that people are considering.
Convenience-based.
I consider the miles coming here today. However, given that will affect consumers and it will affect the retailers as well. What special accompanying things do retailers need, given our area and that we're not close to those big distribution centers?
Sure.
Yet they still might want to come up here even though we're kind of remote. You must have analysis you do that talks about how remote rural towns are. And then consumers. Do you think you'll be looking at fuel costs or drive time and mileage?
Well, I think it bodes well to what we were talking about, convenience-based shopping, particularly for the consumer, and the importance of having some of your needs met at home. I also think from the retail perspective, it's even more important as to why you've got to be able to differentiate yourself on the basis that they've done this before in locations like yours and have the ability to be successful.
What is your lead time on a project like this? You get it going and you get involved in site planning?
A lead time for what? I'm sorry.
Well, if we start from today, when can we see some results of our efforts in retail?
It's about a 40 business day process. We don't work in a vacuum. We work alongside the community to go through the deliverables to make sure you have everything you need.
Amy, my name is Jack Lynch. I'm one of the city council members, and I'd just like to reinforce Lee's comment. In meeting with the county, we're absolutely pledged to have consistency between our plans, and that thrust of communication between ourselves and the county is very important. As you know, we're the crossroads of the county, so we do have great potential on the 4 and the 49. Within two of the topics that were mentioned here, clothing and shoes. let's say 10 years ago, clothing and shoes were both available. Those businesses left, they closed down, and weren't continued. How do you go about countering that? People became uninterested in continuing clothing store and shoe store. And yet, everywhere within the city, everyone said, I'd like to have clothing available and shoes. And what else?
Underwear and socks.
Underwear and socks. Okay, underwear and socks. But it's not.
Everyone's running around naked here.
Thank you for coming for us today. Yeah.
But yeah, that is what had happened in
Yeah.
our city.
Yeah.
And it's something that I personally
Sure.
would like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I don't know what happened 10
Bring
years
back-
ago.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know what the dynamics were in those particular business owners in making a decision. If it truly was they couldn't make money, or if someone passed away, or if they got tired of doing it. I don't know what the dynamics were, quite honestly. So if any of those things exist, that's kind of out of your control.
Yeah.
Passed away? Okay. Well, so that might be part of the question, but I think the real issue of what you're saying is so if we're saying we all would shop there, what's the reality of that? I think that's why you've got to use consumer-based information to say what are our buying habits, our lifestyle habits, because who originally said shoes, maybe that's true, and you are really a shoe buyer, but are you going to be the one customer that supports that store day in and day out? Probably not. So we've got to say, on the basis of consumers, how many shoe buyers do we really have in the particular trade area, and what retailers are looking for those types of consumers? Yes.
This is somewhat of a rhetorical question, but is it possible to argue a convenience-based retail argument by reducing the drive time we're all used to down from an hour and a half down to a half hour to get to retail? Because that's about average.
Well, we would be using, you don't have convenience. You really don't. I mean, but we would be looking at you guys on the basis of a primary trade area to do the inverse of that. To say to a retailer, we have enough of a density, enough of a certain type of customer to warrant your concept here. So you can start getting that.
Can I ask a question just on that? If we had a store in Valley Springs that had a range of shoes, just use that as an example, and there's a comparable store in Sonora or Jackson, how many people would actually, this is not a truth test, but how many people would say, I would be inclined, even if I have to drive to Valley Springs, not that that's a negative, I'm just saying, if I had to drive, I'm going to drive a distance, I'm going to drive to Valley Springs instead of Sonora or Jackson. Is it true the ones that didn't raise their hands would say, no, I'm not, that isn't enough to make me make a change in my decision?
I think the ownership of that store would influence me. If it was
whether it was a box, a chain.
If it was a franchise that Bobby Middleton or Mike Fullaway owned, but it was a national sort of a franchise, I would drive the extra 20 minutes. But if it were a Rite Aid there versus a Rite Aid somewhere else that was doing shoes.
Okay, I just wanted to get a quick snapshot. Yeah.
The problem is that, like, anywhere from Murphy's on up, Sonora is quicker. So it's the drive time again that's going to influence that.
I think it's a mix in Sonora that kind of, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to go to Sonora, I'm going to do multiple things when I go there. So Valley Springs does not yet have that mix. So that's kind of the big thing for me.
Well, and that's why Elko, Nevada hired us, because everybody was going an hour and a half farther than Sonora, about an hour to Carson City south. They'd go to eat there, they'd see a movie, they'd go get all their shopping done, and then they'd go home to Elko. Didn't spend any money with existing businesses, which is driven, yes, you have a tourist base, but you've got to first be able to function on your day in and day out consumers, which are your residents, fortunately or unfortunately, that trade area. So that day in sustainable retail base. So Elko hired us to be able to build A, the development story, B, figure out what their market bore out, and then C, be able to attract some retail concepts where they could keep people at home.
Roger?
Amy, I have a question. It might be a twofold question. Number one, the development in the last, say 20 years in California has been along, I think Craig mentioned this also, has been along highways like 99 or 5. Those little towns have all had the same kind of stores every 20 miles. Is that not true that the development has been kind of along major highways or crossroads?
Sure, I think absolutely, as it related to A opportunities, B opportunities, major cities, number one, major arteries, those are right there, absolutely. But there's a lot of opportunities where those have been filled, where now they're looking for other opportunities.
Okay, then question B on that is, have you done any research or studies looking 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the pike, and what's going to happen with every little jurisdiction having exactly the same kind of stores up and down the freeways, east or west or north or south? It seems to me at some point in time that we're going to reach a point where they're going to have these same little stores all over.
Well, I do have a ton of clients in LA. A lot of LA clients, which you're looking at 3 minutes in terms of their trade area. And you've got little pockets of neighborhoods that they want to be able to kind of get all their needs met and then be done, because the traffic is crazy all the time. So that is, yes, I think that you'll see a lot of change in retail. Retail today, 10 years ago, wasn't the same. You've seen some of your big players evolve and change. Certainly Home Depot, we were talking a little bit earlier about green products. Home Depot's now carrying a lot of green-based types of building types of materials. So there's been a lot of evolution in the retail environments. And I think that also is important why you've got to know, where are we today? Can we make projections? Absolutely. But that has to be on facts. So if you've got housing growth, housing starts, we can make some projections.
Okay, to kind of finish that theme, or to kind of finish that synopsis, I didn't say the right word. Theme is what I'm talking about. Would it be beneficial to have a particular theme, and is it easier to sell if you had a theme? I've been to a couple of major areas, shopping areas in Montana that are very remote, but they do millions and millions of dollars worth of business because they have a theme. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think, a theme is certainly helpful if you have a lot of the elements as a part of that. Jackson Hole, Wyoming, has a theme. But they've got a lot of opportunities that are also for the locals. Palm Springs, California, one of my clients, a lot larger. Have 2 different audiences. They've got a tourist base 6 months out of the year. They've got residents 6 months out of the year. So you've got to be able to meet both.
I do want to recognize that Maria Calloway and Steve Walensky from the Board of Supervisors joined us. So thank you for coming. Oh, I didn't see Tom. I'm sorry. Let me assure you it was an oversight.
To clarify the status, is this a presentation to us as citizens or to the board that has not yet hired you? Are they considering hiring you at the county, at the city level, and has not yet been hired?
Okay, when I saw Amy at the League of Cities, she presented this kind of information about things that we need to be aware of as far as what are retailers looking at and so forth. So today's session is for information, to provide the kinds of things, the things that we need to know how much we don't really know. Okay, if that makes sense. So that's the purpose for Amy being here, and beyond that, that will be something that we have to look at in the future.
I think we encourage you then that if it's the services of Buxton would be appropriate for the city, may we encourage our county supervisors that one great way to be on the same page would be for the county to hire their services as well. If in your summit meetings you can come to agreement, and then you guys will all be on the same page and be exposed to the same information so that there's a consistency of theme.
Right. Rita, if I could hit her hand, we'll sing Kumbaya.
Thank you.
All right.
Just so I don't make another faux pas, and as Russ Thomas is also.
Okay.
And I don't see Bill.
As a community, will we be able to fill out a survey as to what we would like to have here?
Sure, you can certainly do that. I think, from what I understand, you guys might have had it recently, an online survey or some type of a survey? No?
I'm not aware of it in the
Okay.
There was an informal
survey?
conducted by
Okay, sorry.
Pine Tree.net.
Okay. Go ahead.
A lot of the logos that you showed,
As clients.
yeah, the companies, you can walk past those in the Hong Kong airport or Orchard Road, Singapore, or any city in the U.S.
Well, you travel well.
My concern, and the reason I'm attracted up here to Calaveras County, is that there's a lot of uniqueness and local flavor.
Sure.
And I would wonder about services that you could provide to stimulate, just following on Roger's question, stimulate local business or new entrepreneurs that we don't even know yet who might live here, who could develop something that would be unique to this area so that we don't end up looking like every other place in a retail sense.
Sure. Well, a couple things I think have to occur. One, I think you've got to have consistent store hours, where most people, a majority of shopping is happening, after, for residents, on Sundays. For tourists, it's through the weekends. They have to be open after 5 or after 6 and be reasonable. I think you've got to have everybody kind of band together with the same hours. I think you also have to change your storefronts in a way that are attractive and appealing, whether you guys all go in together, and I'm talking about the Main Street area because that's different from what you have on 4. So if we were talking about that, which to me is the unique concepts that you're talking about, there's some things that have to happen from a basic building block to encourage customer growth. I do think there has to be some customer loyalty, customer type of program around those customers. But part of what we do, and a lot of what I talked about, is knowing your customers. So I think if you have a very clear picture of who they are, we could tell you where others like them. So let's say you wanted to, as a county or a city or whatever, I'm trying to cover all my bases here, wanted to direct mail and say, everybody come here, shop here, dine here, stay at our bed and breakfast, stay for the weekend. Well, we could find people that look just like those types of consumers that you're trying to attract all over. So that's something that could be an output for existing businesses.
And those are things that you could also help with.
Sure. Yes, sir.
With the construction of the bypass going through Angels Camp, has anybody looked at what the impact is going to be on the local level of businesses here, and as to where things are going to be located?
Yeah, you may not have noticed it, but we're in the state has started constructing an extension of what we call the bypass that will actually tie the Highway 4 corridor even more tightly together. So in terms of working collaboratively, that bypass links our communities, our uphill communities to our downhill communities much more tightly, with a better, I guess, a better drive time, to use that term. There have been traffic studies done on showing that is, I believe, anticipated to take about 8,000 car trips a day off of the downtown area. That, interestingly enough, is about the growth rate of the vehicle traffic on Highway 49. So about the time you start bleeding off that traffic, the growth in the north-south traffic will just about replace what's bled off of Highway 4. So it's actually kind of a staying action in that sense.
How do you feel that's going to impact the businesses downtown?
The other guys can chime in here too. One of the things is that some of the immediate impact is actually going to come as the result of whatever we choose to do as a community at 4 and 49 right out here at the bridges. One proposal that's on the table would basically wipe out the downtown parking, on-street parking. I think most of the merchants here or any community realize that can have a devastating impact if you lose your on-street parking. That's one of the reasons we've been looking as a city at a lot of options to prevent that kind of destruction happening, because we could wind up being an economic ghost town, in my opinion, if we allowed something like that to go through. So, but I think right now what we are looking at is city and county are recognizing that we need to swim together. Be more of these a school of fish, a nimble set of fish, so that we don't get eaten by the shark. John?
In absence of some specific study that addresses his question about what that does to the economic business downtown, it's my personal opinion, and it's based on nothing substantial, that would mean that what we should do is have a niche market. And I think the people that come here because here is here. They're not coming here because they're going through. The through traffic on North-South 49 is meant to get from Placerville to Sonora. They don't care about stopping here and shopping at the Western Wear store or eating at Cusco's or whatever. They just want to get to Sonora. Log trucks, delivery trucks, blah, blah, blah. The people that come here on the weekends, the motorcycles, the tourists, whatever, they're going to come downtown because the downtown is here, if we make it attractive for them. If we have, just the same stores that everybody else has, they're just going to whiz right on through. Sutter Creek has a bypass that completely went around them. And anybody that wants to go to Sutter Creek is going to go to Sutter Creek. They're not going to go on the bypass. That's for the people that want to get the heck up to Placerville or wherever they're going. So it seems to me that if we had, if you want to call it a niche market, follow what the branding people say to do, or make our own ideas about what our downtown should be, not another Walmart or, I don't want to pick on Walmart, but these, like Roger said, every 20 miles it's the same little strip mall. You need something to satisfy the local community, but I think we are in somewhat a tourist destination. Gold Country has that magnet. That's why I'm here. And I'd personally kind of like to see it stay that way. I don't want to turn it into another Mountain View, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, blah, 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 where I came from. That used to be nice when I was a kid. It's not that way anymore. On and on.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
I'd like to echo the question that was asked about what a bypass does to local businesses. Sutter Creek is a pretty good example, Amador City and Sutter Creek. But we have to be clear on what allowed them to continue to do well and be a destination. They had a business plan. They had to do it in relation to the development of the area just outside Jackson that became the big boxes and all of that. And their plan was to be unique, to be a tourist attraction, to be a place that was historic and where people could get a sense of a small town. And so the cars are still going into Sutter Creek, and anecdotally, at least, the businesses are reporting that it hasn't hurt them. In fact, there was actually an offset. Maybe there are a few less people going through town, but there's more people stopping because the place isn't so jammed up. It's walkable. It's more walkable. It's a better place for families to go. And they developed a business plan that was appropriate to the types of people who wanted to go to that. So the bypass worked in sync with that, whereas without a plan here, it could actually send us into a tailspin. And that's, I think, what this meeting is about, the economic summit about. Let's get a grip and start organizing ourselves for the bypass and what it means to be a destination.
And building on Steve's comments, I think we're talking about two different things as if they were one. Using Amador County as an example, if I need a new pair of pants, I probably go over there and I don't go to downtown Sutter Creek to buy them. I go to a place where I can buy my pants and some other things, and maybe eat dinner and get that done. But if I want to go for a ride on my motorcycle on the weekend, I'll go up and I'll go through Sutter Creek and I'll stop and I'll have lunch at one of the restaurants in Sutter Creek. So it's not either or, in my opinion. It's both. We need the place where you can take the family and go get what you need and go home, and then we need the unique downtown area that's an attraction for people to come from other places as a destination.
Anybody see the article in Sunset Magazine, this one Sunset Magazine on what we're talking about on Sutter Creek? They went up and down the Highway 49, and what were they looking for? Unique, specialized things. Restaurants was the big issue, was it not? Am I correct? and shopping, and they got out and they walked the town, and they saw all of the nice things they liked, and they put in a big article in Sunset Magazine saying, and that'll drive business like crazy to Sutter Creek.
Amy, how do you answer that? Having your
Dual?
cake, having your cake and eat it too. Can
I
you?
think you have to be honest with you. I mean, I think that was very well stated because, and I'm going to use your Walmart example, and I'm just using it. I know that's not anyone's cup of tea necessarily. Walmart's not going to go into the downtown, number one. That doesn't even go together. And so, but there's absolutely an opportunity that you guys have to be able to achieve both. You have a charm of a downtown. You can know your customers. You can help your existing businesses. You could attract some complementary retail that could help your residents and maybe benefit from sales tax revenue in the process. You could also be able to grow your existing corridor, and so you've got that synergy, that retail begetting retail. You're not there yet.
Amy, did you see the Walmart that went into Biloxi, wasn't it? Is that the gambling city down on the coast?
Yes.
Did you see that?
I have not seen that.
They put in?
You going to gamble here?
No. I thought, but I don't want to bring it up.
That's a whole separate issue. All right.
Have you worked with communities that have been surrounded by, like, they've been surrounded by Walmart, but they don't have anything yet? But they want to be unique and then actually pull people from those areas back into our area. Like, say, a Target as one of the things, or a Kohl's, as something that's just different than what they offer in Sonora, that would maybe attract people from Tuolumne back over into our county, actually. That's kind of what I was wondering. Have you worked with communities that have done that?
Well, yes, but I think you first have to start with what do you have that the market can bear out, because my gut feel would say you're not a Kohl's today, but I could be way wrong. So let's look at what their expansion strategy is. Let's look at your customer base and see, do the two marry up?
Well, I go back to Steve's saying on Sutter Creek, but now you go through downtown Jackson after getting more talent. Downtown Jackson looks like a blight area. I mean, it's going to get even worse when Cragen moves out. I mean, they got all kinds of vacant buildings that left that downtown Jackson area, and downtown Jackson city limits itself have to be suffering majorly on sales tax loss. And it looks, it's an ugly looking, it's getting to be an ugly looking town.
Diane?
How long, but go back and question that. When something like that shifts, when you have a shift of retail from a downtown to the suburban areas, how long does it take for the downtown to recover?
Downtowns across the United States are really struggling and really trying to define who they are. And a lot of it's historic buildings, older buildings where you don't have maybe the footprint you really need to showcase your wares appropriately. So as a whole, there's some tremendous issues around the downtown. Now, can you overcome that? Yes, you certainly can if you can start defining who you are, start knowing who your customers are, and start targeting those customers, and then building the appropriate types of concepts to attract those customers.
Diane?
Is this a good time to be looking at that kind of slowed economy? And are retailers looking to open their stores now, or is it?
Definitely. Our clients are. Number one, the president and CEO of the California Redevelopment Association just said in last month's newsletter, I don't know, I think you guys are members of that, basically now's the time to spend right and spend well on economic development. And you've got to be able to plan for the future and plan right. Yes.
Behind Diana.
Okay.
I can't see who it is.
But Gloria, okay. To look at for future shopping and future shoppers, how do you think that the economic base is going to be impacted by internet sales with this younger generation who's so savvy with the internet?
Sure. And you guys are in an area where there's probably some internet shopping going on because you can't get some of the things that you want to get. Most of your retailers, with the exception of Amazon, are still in brick and mortar locations as their primary 90% of their business opportunity, as opposed to the online piece. That's a supplementary piece. As a woman, potentially, maybe you would like to actually physically go in and try on clothes as opposed to ordering them online and shipping them back and forth. So that's one of the things that they're facing on the online piece that you can't do. Travel, a lot of travel can be done online, obviously. Banking, a lot of those types of things, but we're not talking necessarily about banking as part of that. But there's still a very major opportunity, more so on the brick and mortar, and the online piece is a complementary, supplementary piece. Yes?
I was just wondering whether in your studies and in the work you do, whether you have also tracked for the towns where you help them attract businesses, whether you have data on whether those businesses have stayed long term. And the second one is whether in your projections you're looking into the fact that with the projected declines in oil resources, that maybe business as we know it today may not look like that a few decades down the road.
Well, I know that retailers need customers, and there are going to always be opportunities. I mean, we're in a free enterprise society, so there's going to always be opportunities for businesses to grow and thrive. And so clearly you've got to be able to know the customer base and also what that retail picture lays out to be. As it relates to the retailers that have been there and stayed, yes. That's why we have, over 1,700 retail clients, and the number keeps growing because of our success rate in the retail industry. We are the industry leader in the retail industry as it relates to site selection. Yes.
I was very appreciative of the mention of Jackson and its close to death experience economically. I think it's important that people understand that Sutter Creek and downtown Jackson are almost equidistant from Martell. And so understanding how each one got where it is very instructive to our situation here. As I recall, at the time Jackson faced its moment of truth, that the Downtown Business Association was busy fighting with each other about minor things like the price of the parking meters, and had the attitude, nobody can tell me what to do when it came time to make a theme or determine what the place might, how it might sustain its competitive advantage. It broke down organizationally. And I think that having a purpose, a theme, a niche, having a clear relationship to inevitable market developments just a couple miles away, the absence of that destroyed Jackson. And it has not been able to recover since. It's had kind of a revolving, it's a law of diminishing returns really is what's happened there. Whereas Sutter Creek, well organized in its downtown, and with clear vision of what it wanted to be and how it wanted to capitalize on its assets, managed to prosper in the same distance from the same competition. So very instructive for us here, I think.
Well, we have Murphy's here. In Calhoun County, we have Murphy's, but that's grown in the last
Yep. Well, that's, the difference between...
So, Steve, may I pick your brain for a minute? When you have a county that is so diversified and don't get along too well, and they fight with Tuolumne County quite a bit, and they just now are starting to talk to Angels Camp. It sort of parallels what Jackson did. It had the separatist attitude. How long do you think it's going to take for the 5 districts and this city to start really acting cohesively and start agreeing? Because the tradition around here is not to agree.
I'll answer with a statistic. For the previous 10 years, there's not been a single joint meeting between the Calaveras County Supervisors and the Angels City Council. In the last 2 months, we've had 3. I think we're beginning to, we have contact, we're trying to collaborate and be responsible to one another and begin to find what we have in common rather than argue about what we disagree about. I find that hopeful, and I see us moving much closer together on a regional basis.
But it's going to take some time, isn't it, before you start making concrete decisions?
Or
start agreeing on concrete vision or anything?
We have parallel general plan efforts underway, and if we coordinate that, it can be much more immediate than...
Which both of those plans are 4 to 5 years late. So...
Well, okay.
That's really the kicker, And both the county and the city is using the consulting, and we're both looking at the same problem.
Well, I find this a hopeful moment, but how we deal with it will be the real test of that.
I want to throw something out. If you go back to the chapter before why Sutter Creek is Sutter Creek and why Jackson is Jackson, I think there was a moment in history in which those retailers that are now in Amador County were looking at Jackson. And why are they not in Jackson and are in an unincorporated area is a critical question. The other thing I would say is that the fact that a business in Jackson went out of business is fundamentally because of one reason. People stopped shopping, right? And they stopped shopping there because they had opportunities that were more attractive to them as consumers. And they went to those opportunities. So I think if we put both of those things together, we probably have some interesting things to talk about. The fact that we have small boutique stores here doesn't mean we're all going to shop, right? The fact that I think it works in Sutter Creek is because it's a tourist economy. But I also know most of those business owners there, and when they go to shop, they go to motel. Okay? And that's something we need to embrace.
We can't keep on having an either or. What we have to do is best places, and what created Martell at the expense of Jackson and other places was a failure of government to figure out revenue sharing between incorporated entities in the county. And that's why when we only have one incorporated city, we should get a template for resolving those things so it doesn't distort development and make it almost incompatible. There are best places to put these things. There's best places to figure out where our infrastructure is going to go to be able to house larger things and still preserve and not at the expense of other pieces of our economy. But it has to be thought through, and it requires a level of planning that hasn't yet evidenced itself in this county, particularly around infrastructure.
John?
Question about kind of the connecting dots in the bigger system. Does Buxton do site location solely, or is that embedded in templates that would help us look at employment, transportation, climate change even? It's going to shift our watershed dynamics. All kinds of issues that knock up against retail and have a bearing on how successful it can be. I'm just wondering how many different domains do you work in or do you provide services in?
Sure. I think just as you guys are trying to differentiate and say what are you best at, what is our EST, our best is knowing customers and how that plays out in the retail industry, the healthcare industry, and consumer packaged goods. So we're not into knowing what climate changes, those pieces. It's all driven on identifying and knowing your customers and how that plays out, particularly for your case in the retail industry.
Because we have about 50,000 people in the area the size of Delaware and only one north-south corridor, and so it's really hard. You have to drive to do anything here. So transportation, getting people to their jobs, all these things seem to me to be very important to the decision-making process.
Yeah, and I think that's what your leaders here are talking about.
Amy, I think that Supervisor Lewinsky put it probably best at the joint meeting between supervisors and council. We say, do we want to be a county that's rich and ugly, or poor and beautiful? So we need to find that balance, and the unfortunate part about it is that Angels Camp is right in the middle of that. We have a lot of surrounding areas that will come down to Angels Camp where it seems like all the fingers are kind of pointing from some of the supervisor level to the city level. And so that's where there needs to be some sensitivity, and I think we could probably find not a the silver bullet, but a good economic package that maybe we're not the most beautiful swamp, but maybe we're not the ugliest either. So I think that's the balance we need to have. So if your company can find that niche, and that's why I asked that question earlier, I think that's probably what a lot of the residents in the City of Angels, because we will be the most impacted immediately anyway in terms of infrastructure, circulation, and the whole 9 yards. So think that's what we're looking for, at least in terms of the residents of the city of Angels.
Okay.
I'm going to give my Tom, go ahead.
Let me just give a comment. I'm Tom Tryon. I'm the county supervisor, and I represent Murphy's. And quite frankly, in my opinion, Murphy's is probably the most successful of the old historical communities. I ran in 1984, so when I first ran, Murphy's was not obviously what Murphy's is today. But I don't think that the dichotomy is between rich and ugly or poor and beautiful. I don't think that's the dichotomy at all. I mean, you can take a look at Murphy's, and I would consider Murphy's to be rich and beautiful, and you can do the same thing. Angels is going to be different than Murphy's because its assets are different than Murphy's. Angels is at the crossroads of 4 and 49, so they're going to naturally be, sort of, in my opinion, for the Highway 4 corridor anyway. And one of the things I pushed hard is I think we need to look more at the Highway 4 corridor as an integrated whole and not as sort of segregated communities. I mean, I think the Highway 4 corridor will live or die as a corridor, not as individual communities, and I think we're moving more in that direction. But I've been to a lot of seminars, and usually the seminars are all focused on marketing or branding, etc. And to me, it sort of goes back, I guess, to my old business school days, where there was always a little bit of a conflict between the finance guys and the marketing guys. And I consider myself more of a sort of a finance capital flow person. And one of the concerns I always have in these meetings, nobody ever mentions the word capital, or nobody ever says that we need to attract capital to the community, and what do you do to attract capital to a community? And one of the things you need to do is not overregulate, and you have to allow entrepreneurship to invest that capital and be creative and follow to a significant extent their own dreams, and not sort of a government constrained dream. And you have downtown Angels Camp, which I think can develop into a sort of an historical community, much as Murphy's has developed. And much of the success of Murphy's has now come down into Angels Camp. Crusoe's was a restaurant in Murphy's and moved down to Angels. Stories and Stones started at Murphy's, came down to Angels. The Wheelers started from Murphy's, came down into Old Town Angels Camp. Ernesto Gutierrez owns the Stories and Stones building, and also where books are more on it. In Alphaville, he's a success story from Murphy's that transferred capital down into Angels Camp. But I think one of the themes has to be is how we attract capital, and you have to have some faith in the marketplace to allow creativity and entrepreneurship to take place and to flourish. So you can look at downtown Angels and say, well, that's going to be one set of development, and that's going to develop a lot different than up by the intersection in Alphaville, where we have 4 and 49. And you already see that. I mean, where are the volume stores? Where are the shopping centers? Where did Long's and Starbucks go in? They went right up there at the intersection. Where did Rite Aid and Save Mart go in just down from the intersection? So you're going to have an area up there that I think will be a more higher volume. That doesn't mean you're going to be a big box store, but I would even look at Long's and Rite Aid and Save Mart and say they're sort of small box stores. I mean, the next step's probably going to be a medium box store, but it's going to be up at that end of town. It's not going to be in the old end of town. I think it will be a tremendous benefit for Angels to have this bypass completed. And you're not going to go right back up to the same traffic count immediately. That's going to take a considerable, in my opinion, period of time. And the key is to get then the 49 bypass to where downtown and the annex become city roads. And one of the great boons in Murphy's is the county controls the roads. We can close the roads for a Christmas open house. We can close the road for Irish Days or Gravestone. We have a huge community-sponsored volunteer organization. It's a it was volunteers that did the library, it's the volunteers that do all the events up there. We have a very viable community club. We have a viable arts colony in the Murphy's Theater, and the Black Bart Theater, and the Children's Theater, and different things. And we sort of developed, and one of the great boons has been the wine industry. And so now we have, basically we're known for arts, fine dining, wine, weddings, flower shops, those sort of things. And those things all tend to require, sort of beautiful landscaping. You don't have falling down buildings, etc. If that's, the direction you go in. We expanded Main Street. When we started, it was a very small little section of Main Street. We went all the way down to French Gulch Road. Now we've gone all the way up to the Firehouse. The next will be Big Tree Road, particularly in household developments. But I think there needs to be a real emphasis on capital attraction and what you do for capital attraction. Sometimes, in my opinion, that's in conflict with what some of the marketing people want to do, where they want lots of rules and regulations and historical districts and design and scenic review districts, where to me is not necessarily attractive. And when I was first elected, I was even more controversial than I am today, because the first thing we did is we did away with design and scenic review districts, and I said no historical districts, and we're going to be more free-market oriented. We're going to do all we can to attract capital, and we were successful in that endeavor. But anything that in my opinion, that can lead to point-of-destination traffic as opposed to through traffic is a good thing. So if you can, we worked hard, and I worked hard at Murphy's to make sure that we try to get traffic not to go on to Murphy's Grave to go through downtown Murphy's trying to come to Angels, but to keep them on Highway 4. And we put weight limits on the bridges in downtown, which upset some people. And we've tried to do the developments up there and design them such that the traffic goes to 4 and it doesn't go to the Great Road and it doesn't go downtown. And we've made very conscious efforts in our land use planning to see that happens. And so, to me, it's not a dichotomy of being one or other. I mean, you can do all these things right. It's a question of location. It's a question of infrastructure. It's a question of design. Because you can't deny the citizens. You can, but you do it at your detriment. If you tell the citizens, no, you can't shop for what you want here. You have to go to Sonora, or you have to go to Martell, or you have to go to Jackson. We can meet the market needs. That we have the feasibility studies to support the marketplace and meet our current needs, and do it in such a way, if we focus on location, infrastructure, and design, such that we can prosper and still have a good standard of living, and still have, as the gentleman back here says, still have beauty in what we're doing. So I guess I'm not at all buying into the dichotomy between rich and ugly and poor and beautiful. I mean, my dichotomy is rich and beautiful. So my objective. Thank you.
I was short to me, but yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Kind of following along with what Tom said, we need to know our customer, and you repeated that like a million times. And you said age, sex, and income, and also the ring trade area being retail potential, auto sales, and restaurant sales. Those were some of the measures that you use to determine value of the trade area. Have you seen any movement towards retailers wanting to be near parks or open space or anything that attracts people to an area besides just retail? And along with that, have you seen any movement towards retailers wanting to push more healthy behaviors, like in terms of restaurants pushing more healthy food, or do you think the consumer is going to drive that change?
I think that's a combination. I think almost every chain restaurant in America right now is pushing some sort of healthy agenda. Applebee's has a Weight Watchers menu. Subway, you've got the whole Jared thing. So there's a lot, you'd be remiss if you were in a restaurant in America that's pushing some sort of healthy option. Whether or not the consumer chooses it is up to the consumer. Related to, I'm trying to remember what your first part was.
Open
Open
space,
space.
park area,
Yeah, I mean, I think if
design,
you've been
that's
to Windsor, California, if you've been to Redwood City, if you've been to State Street in Santa Barbara, if you've been to downtown San Diego, which happens to be a client of ours, there's a lot of places where retail is fitting in with what's happening with the natural elements. So it's just an opportunity to grow and survive, I think. Yes.
We've had Amy on for an hour and a half now. I'm going to exercise a little bit of crowd control. But I've learned a lot in 24 years of marriage, and I'm going to give my wife a lesson.
Good idea. I was like, we better not cut it off yet. Yeah. Even I knew that.
You mentioned that you do a survey to get to know the customers
Yes.
that do the shopping.
Yeah.
That's the people that live in the county.
The trade area, that's
We
correct.
have a high tourism. We count on tourism to
Sure.
make a lot of money. How do you find out what kind of shops the tourism want to have,
Okay.
tourists want? And then how do you balance that, how many tourist shops versus the shops that we need to be able to do things we want to do?
Okay, that's a good point. I didn't bring that up. A couple things. One is when we're looking at supply demand, we're looking at everything. You know, what is the leakage? What is the supply in the area? When we're looking at tourism, you guys have all said we've got a lot of tourists. Grover Beach happens to be a client of mine, and so does Rio Grande and Atascadero. A lot of tourism. But if you can't quantify it, Grover Beach has the only beach in the area that you can actually park your campers on, and they think they have 1 million visitors. Well, it's unquantifiable. That's a gut feel. Palm Springs, on the other hand, is able to quantify it. I was able to get from the city, their second homeowners, their actual, from the title companies, second homeowners, home addresses, original home addresses, not Palm Springs addresses, and then also their hotels in the area, what the actual over a course of time. I need a minimum of 5,000 records. That means that, because anything below that really, it doesn't add tons to what's happening in the trade area. So I need a minimum of 5,000 unique home addresses of your tourists to be able to profile, to say what do they look like in the buying habits and the lifestyle habits, so that you can then say, here's what we look like from a residential picture, consumer snapshot, and then here's what we look like from a tourist picture, consumer snapshot.
Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then the council will reconvene for possible discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.